Hello, this is Bethany Daly with Getting It Pegged and Authentic Knitting Board, bringing you the newest edition of our Stitchology series. Making bobbles is a fun way to add some pop and pizzazz to your projects. So let's get started. In order to incorporate bobbles into our project today, we're going to learn the bobble and seeds repeating stitch pattern. And to do that, we need 22 pegs, and also we're going to be working the stitch through 22 rows to get the full repeat. I have cast on to the loom already 22 pegs from left to right, and we're going to start reading the first row and all odd rows from right to left. If you're working this in the round, cast on in a clockwise direction and therefore read every row as beginning from the left to the right or continuing in a clockwise direction. All right, so the first row is very simple. We're just going to knit until we reach peg 12. I have placed some markers on the pegs, and those markers are for the blue ones are for creating our bobbles. We need 3 pegs to create these bobbles that just have a lot of pop, and they're extra large, so they require 3 pegs. Then these center 2 yellow ones are going to be our vertical line of seed stitch that is a border between the bobbles, and it frames them in. Okay, so we're going to knit pegs 1 through 11, and I'm using the U stitch. Okay, for row 1, we're going to knit this first yellow marked peg, which is peg 11, and then we will purl on peg 12. And then knit to peg 21. Which is the final one right before the last yellow peg, and that one is going to be purled. That's peg 22. Okay, I'm going to proceed with row 2 of our stitch pattern. So knit 11, okay, now see, last row we purled this one. This time it's going to be knit, and the one next to it, which is peg 11, will be purled. So the rows will alternate these yellow pegs back and forth so that it creates the seed stitch effect. And now we will knit 9, and then purl peg 1. And that is row 2. Row 3 is worked the same way. Knit 11, last time we purled this one, so now it's going to be knit, and peg 12 is purled. and then knit 9, and purl 1, which is peg 22. And repeat for row 4. And purl 1. All right, row 5 is where the magic happens with creating our bobble. So first we're going to start the row with knitting 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember, we've marked our bobble pegs, so we know that they're going to be created across these 3 pegs here. So these are pegs 5, 6, and 7. But what I'm going to do is just consider them 1, 2, and 3 for the purposes of making a bobble. And then we will continue with the rest of the peg numbers as usual. So what we're going to do is go ahead and knit all the way through pegs 1, 2, and 3 of the bobble. When you number the pegs of the bobble individually, that allows you to be able to work them from either direction, and it doesn't matter what number the original pegs are if you just consider the bobble starting 1, 2, and 3 in the direction that you're going currently. So that makes making a bobble in either direction really easy. So I have knit the bobble pegs 1, 2, and 3. Now I'm going to take the loop from peg 1 and move it to peg 2. And I'm going to take the loop from peg 3 and move it to peg 2. Oops. Just like that. Cinch it in a little bit. Now knit off 2 over 1. Right there on peg 2 of the bobble pegs. Now I'm going to create a half hitch on peg 3. And now to do that, it's like an E-wrap, but whereas if you're going to make an E-wrap, it's just like that, and the working yarn is freely moving and coming from the top of the wrap, that's an E-wrap. Half hitch is backwards from that. So to do that, we're going to take and pinch our working yarn and twist it so that the working yarn is going to come from under the loop. See that? And then we're going to place that on the peg. And what that does is creates a nice little cast on that will hold its knot, and it won't get loose like an E-wrap would. Okay, so half hitch cast on onto peg 3, knit peg 2, and half hitch cast on again onto peg 1 and place it onto there. So working yarn's coming from under the wrap there. Okay, now we're going to knit pegs 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to knit from 3 to 1. And then back, knit again, pegs 1 through 3. Okay, we're going to decrease again. So we're going to move the loop from peg 1 onto peg 2, and the loop from peg 3 onto peg 2 as well. Cinch it a little bit, knit off those 2 loops over 1. All right, now the bobble we've done all the work for our bobble, but now we need to connect it with the base row that we have down here. So in order to do that, notice I put my working yarn between pegs 2 and 3 because we've just worked this peg, so it needs to be after peg 2, right, to continue working on down the row. So I'm going to reach and turn my loom so I can see the inside of the stitches here. And what I'm going to do is kind of pull it out a little bit so that I can see the individual stitches and pull those back up onto the loom. So here's the first one that I'm going to grab right here, and that is going to go back up onto peg 3 of the 3 bobble pegs. Now pull it again, and I'm going to find the one that's in the center here. It's going to be easier if I have it on my hook, and now I'm going to put it onto peg 2 like that, and then do the final one right here. See if you can see what that looks like right there, and that is going to go up onto peg 1. So now we have filled our pegs again, 1, 2, and 3, and 2 has 2 loops on it, and we're just going to leave it that way for now and continue directly from peg 2 and just go straight to peg 3 and knit it. Okay, and now we've completed, well, almost completed our bobble. This loop will get it knit off 2 over 1 in the next row, and you'll see that in a minute. So we've worked our bobble, and the instructions say to knit 4. So let's do that. 1, 2, 3. Let's make sure. You can see back here, if you get a little stuck on your seed stitch pegs, you can look behind and see which one you've knitted on and which one you purled on the last time. So you can see here that the last row that we did, this one was a purl. See that little loop on the inside of the stitch? Then this one, there is no extra little loop on the inside there, which means that we knit that one. That's why it's just knit off over there. This one has one tucked down inside, which means that was a purl. So we're going to do opposite. So that's a way to check yourself and make sure you're on track. So yes, we have knit 3, and this one is a knit, and this one is a purl to keep it opposite. And their instructions say knit 4, and this is the purl 1, and then it's a knit 3, and create our bobble, which we are now, according to our instructions, we're at our 3 bobble pegs, which are placed on pegs 16, 17, and 18, but we're going to count them for the purposes of working our bobble, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, to help you learn how to, we saw that there was a stitch missing off this peg. I'm sure that I'll see it in the replay when that happened, but in order to put this back on the loom and find it, we don't have to frog the whole thing. I just went under here and I found where the last live loop was, and I placed that back up onto the peg. But that leaves us with a couple stitches that are now loose, that are not knit, that are above that loop because it slipped out of those knit stitches. Do you see that? When the stitch was lost. So I'm going to bring that, both of those, to the front of the peg. There we go, to the front. We have now 3 stitches here. This is our last found knitted loop, and these are our 2 loops that we found that slipped out. So this is the top one. So I'm just gonna hold that one aside for a minute and go ahead and knit this one right there. So the second loop is now knit, and now we'll put this one back on and knit it, and there we go. Now we can check to make sure we've knit them all by pulling this off and looking down inside the chains. You can see that they're now all knit and there's no loose ones in there. So we've now fixed our slipped stitch that came off accidentally. All right, so that little repair is done. So let's move on to making our bobble. So we're going to knit pegs 1, 2, and 3 of the bobble. Move the loop from peg 1 to peg 2. Move the loop from peg 3 to peg 2 as well, and then knit off. There we go. And now we're going to create that half hitch cast on onto peg 3, which is done by pinching it in your forefinger, your pointer finger, and your thumb, and twisting. And now we have that loop where the working yarn is coming from underneath the twist, and that just gets placed directly onto the peg like that. And then we're going to knit peg 2 and create another half hitch cast on. So grab it, twist, and place directly onto that peg, just like that. All right, now we're going to knit pegs 1, 2, and 3, and back again, 3, 2, and 1, and then again, pegs 1, 2, and 3, and now we're going to move the loop from peg 1 to 2, from 3 also to 2, knit off, 2 over 1, and then our working yarn comes just between peg 2 and 3, so it doesn't get put in the wrong spot when we pull up these stitches. Okay, so now we're going to look at the stitches here. Pull it up a little bit and you'll be able to see. Okay, so I have the one that I want to bring to peg 1, or I'm sorry, to peg 3 is here. This one. And I'm going to place, whoops, the one? Yes. I'm going to place that onto peg 3. Now find the one at the base of the bobble. That looks like our winner right here. And that's going to go on to peg 2. And then the one for peg 1 is right there. There we go. Now we've got 3 loops here, and our working yarn is still coming between 2 and 3, and then we're going to just carry on with our row, and the final step of the bobble is to knit peg 3. And now the next step is to knit 3, purl 1. Okay, row 5 is complete. For rounds 6 through 9, let's repeat rows 1 through 4. So rows 10 and 11 are going to just be repeating knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, all the way across. And you'll do the same on row 11. Just start with knit and proceed with purl, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 through the end of the row. So why don't you go ahead and pause your video and meet me right back here after you have finished row 11. Okay, so beginning for row 12, we're going to repeat rows 1 through 4, which is the same row all the way through. But instead of starting usually on row 1, we'd start over here on the right side and work to the left. This time it's switched because we had that row of bobbles in the middle, so that threw our rows off by 1. So now we're starting the opposite direction. Okay, so but it works exactly the same. So let's go ahead and repeat rows 1 through 4, exactly the same. It's just coming from the other direction. And meet me back here as soon as you are done with that. And we will continue with row 16. Okay, I've just completed rows 12 through 15, and now we're ready to proceed to row 16, which is just a repeat of row 5, which is our bobble row. The only difference is that we're going from right to left instead of left to right. So let's go ahead and work that. It starts with a knit 4, and now we have reached our 3 pegs that are going to be used for our bobbles. And instead of being numbered in the 20s, how they are, or let's see, what would they be in our row? They would be 16, 17, and 18. Instead of that, we're going to number them 1 through 3, going in the direction that we are traveling. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3 from left to right. Okay, so we're going to knit pegs 1 through 3. Then move the loop from peg 3 onto, from peg 1 onto peg 2. Push that down there. And then the loop from peg 3 also onto peg 2. And then we're going to knit off 2 over 1. And then we create our half hitch cast on. Now, because we've switched directions, I'm holding the working yarn now in my left hand, and I'm going to pinch with my right, pinch, twist, and now we have it going in the correct direction. So here it goes on to peg 3. Then we're going to knit peg 2, and then another half hitch cast on onto peg 1, and then we're going to knit pegs 1 through 3, and then 3 through 1, and then 1 through 3 again, okay. Then we're going to decrease that bobble down, so move the loop from peg 1 to peg 2, spreading the loop out and getting it on there. Peg 1 or 3's loop needs to also move to peg 2, and then we're going to knit off 2 over 1, on peg 2. And now we place the working yarn between pegs 2 and 3 like this, and then look behind the loom to find our loops to pull up. Okay, I'm going to grab this one right here for peg 1. Then at the base of our bobble, we're going to find the loop we want. I think we're going to go one more right here. Right there. And that's going to go on peg 2. Oops. Like that. And now the third peg's loop is right here. Get all the strands. Sometimes it's a little tricky to separate it from the work. Just be patient and you can usually pick it out. And that goes on peg 3. And then we're going to just go right from peg 2 to peg 3 and knit that off like that. And continue with row 16, which is a repeat of row 5. So now we knit 4, purl 1, knit 3, and now we're at our 3 bobble pegs. Once again, on pegs, there are actually pegs 4, 5, and 5, 6, and 7, but we're going to number them 1, 2, and 3 in the order that we are traveling from left to right. 1, 2, and 3. So we start out by knitting them all. 1, 2, 3, and then we take the loop from peg 1, move to peg 2, take the loop from peg 3, also move to peg 2, and knit off 2 over 1, half hitch cast on onto peg 3, knit peg 2, half hitch cast on onto peg 1, and there we go. Now we knit pegs 1 through 3, and 3 through 1, and 1 through 3 again, and then we decrease at the top of the bobble. So move the loop from peg 1 to peg 2, and the loop from 3 also to peg 2, and knit off 2 over 1, working yarn between pegs 2 and 3, and then we find our loops to close up the bobble. Okay, here is the one I want for peg 1, and at the base of our bobble, I like this one tucked in there. This is the trickiest one, I think, to pull up. Okay, now we pull that, we got the loop, we're going to pull it to peg 2, and then peg 1's loop is right, or I'm sorry, peg 3's loop is right there, and pull that up onto peg 3, and then we knit peg 3, and then complete row 16, which is knit 3, and purl 1. Okay, so now we will proceed to rows 17 through 20. And 17 through 20 are just repeats of rows 1 through 4. So go ahead and work rows 17 through 20 exactly as you did again in rows 1 through 4. And go ahead and pause your video and do that. And meet me back here as soon as you are done with that. And we'll continue with the final 2 rows. And remember, on your bobble pegs, the pegs 2, just knit 2 over 1 when you come to those. Okay, I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so we're just going to, row 21 is knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and just go ahead and continue that for both rows 21 and 22, and meet me back here when you are done. All right, I have completed rows 21 and 22, so that means that our repeating rows are complete. And when you look at the back side of this, you can see it's a little stretched out still from being on the loom, but you can see how we've got your bobbles, and it's got 1 row of seed border here, 2 stitches of seed pattern here, and another bobble, and then another single row of seed over here. And when you repeat it, so let's say you wanted to repeat this again, you could do even just do 11 pegs additionally if you'd like, but in order to get the full repeat, you'd want to do 22, and that would put 2 rows in between each of your sets of bobbles. Now, a little trick that I wanted to show you for your bobbles, because they're not just like you want to stretch your stitches when you get it down from the loom so it sort of sets them into their proper position. The bobbles kind of need a little help too. And what I like to do is go to the side where we knit those rows of our 3 pegs and pull them outward on each side. Just grab, because they like to curl underneath, which is good, so it looks seamless. But you just want to pull it out just a little bit so it stretches those rows into, instead of a little like a tiny little I-cord, so it makes your bobble just nice and round and full and just pops from your project. Okay, so that's the seed and bobble stitch. And thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope to see you next month for our newest Stitchology coming up.